Chapter 2: The Shadow of the Past. The whispers had not entirely died down even after 9 or 99 days. Bilbo Baggins's second disappearance was discussed throughout Hobbiton, and indeed across the entire Shire, for a year and a day, and was remembered even more than that. It became a kind of fireside story for the younger hobbits, and eventually Crazy Baggins, who had vanished in a flash and a clap and reappeared with pockets full of jewels and gold, became a character reserved for legend and lived on in memory long after the actual events were forgotten. But in the meantime, the general opinion across the neighborhood was that Bilbo, who had always seemed a bit odd, had finally gone mad and had run off into the wild. There was no doubt that he had fallen into a pool or a river and met a tragic end, though hard to say exactly when. Responsibility for this was laid on Gandalf. If only that old wizard had let young Frodo alone, he might have been safe and developed his hobbit sensibilities, they said. And indeed, everyone had seen that the wizard had left Frodo alone. He had been safe, but the growth of his hobbit sensibilities was not apparent. In truth, he began to inherit Bilbo's peculiar reputation. He refused to wear mourning clothes, and the following year he held a birthday party for Bilbo's 112th birthday, which he called the Party of 100 Waits. But it did not make much of a stir, with 20 guests invited and abundant food and drink flowing like snow and rain, as hobbits still said. Some people were quite shocked, but Frodo continued the custom of celebrating Bilbo's birthday every year until they grew used to it. He said he did not think Bilbo was dead. When asked, "Then where is he?" he simply shrugged. He lived alone, as Bilbo had before. But he had many friends, especially young hobbits, most descended from old Took, who had admired Bilbo as children and often visited Bag End. Folko Boffin and Fredegar Bolger were two of them, but his closest friends were Peregrine Took, commonly called Pippin, and Merry Brandybuck. His real name was Meriadoc, though few remembered it. Frodo often roamed the Shire with them, but he frequently wandered alone, and to the astonishment of the more observant, sometimes walked on hills and through forests far from home under starlight. Merry and Pippin suspected that occasionally he visited the elves as Bilbo had done. As time passed, people began to notice that Frodo showed signs of good preservation. He retained the healthy, vigorous appearance of a hobbit just out of childhood. Some folks are always lucky, they said. But by the time Frodo approached the sober age of 50, they began to find it rather strange. Frodo himself, after the initial excitement of realizing he was master and Baggins of Bag End, felt quite content. For several years he seemed happy and not overly concerned with the future. But the part of him that he did not fully understand regretted more and more that he had not gone away with Bilbo. He found himself wandering, especially in autumn, into the wild and strange scenes of mountains he had never seen appeared in his dreams. He began to say to himself, "Perhaps one day I shall cross the river." The other half of his mind always answered, "Not yet." Things continued this way until the early years of his 40s passed quickly, and his 50th birthday approached. 50 was a number he felt somewhat significant or worrying. After all, it was the age when adventures had suddenly befallen Bilbo. Frodo began to have sleepless nights, and the old paths seemed to have more traffic again. He looked at maps, wondering what lay beyond their borders. Most maps made in the Shire only showed the blank spaces beyond the edges. He wandered farther into the fields and often went alone, and Merry and his other friends watched him with concern. He was often seen walking and talking with travelers who had begun to appear in the Shire. Rumors circulated about strange events in the wider world, and since Gandalf had neither appeared nor sent any messages for many years, Frodo gathered all the news he could get. The elves, occasionally coming to the Shire, could now be seen crossing the western woods in the evening, passing through and not returning. They were leaving Middle-earth and no longer concerned with its troubles. However, dwarves appeared on the roads in unusual numbers. The ancient east-west road through the Shire, ending at the Grey Havens, was always used by dwarves travelling to their mines in the Blue Mountains. They were Frodo's primary source of news about distant lands if they wished to provide it. It was like a rule that dwarves spoke little and hobbits did not ask further. But now, Frodo often encountered strange dwarves from far-off lands seeking refuge in the west. They were in trouble, and some whispered of the enemy and the land of Mordor. Hobbits knew these names only in legends of a dark past, like shadows on the background of their memories. But they were disturbing and worrisome. It seemed that evil powers in Mirkwood, once thought scattered by the White Council, had reappeared with renewed strength in the old strongholds of Mordor. The Dark Tower was said to be rebuilt. From there, the power would spread far and wide, and war was extending east and south with fear growing. Orc numbers, corresponding to the goblins in The Hobbit, were multiplying in the mountains. Trolls spread, no longer simple fools, but cunning and armed with terrible weapons. And whispers hinted at creatures even more fearsome, though unnamed. Of course, very little of this reached ordinary hobbits. But even the deaf and homebound had begun to hear strange stories, and those whose trades took them beyond the borders had seen odd things. A discussion took place at the Green Dragon in Bywater on a spring afternoon when Frodo turned 50, showing that rumours had reached even the peaceful heart of the Shire, though most hobbits still laughed at them. Sam Gamgee sat in a corner by the fire. Opposite him was Ted Sandyman, son of the miller, and a number of rustic hobbits listening in. "Surely you've heard strange stories these days," said Sam. "Eh," said Ted. "So have you if you pay attention. But I can hear fireside stories and children's tales at home if I like." "Certainly you can," replied Sam, "and I dare say there's more truth in them than you think. After all, who invented those stories? Speak of the dragons, for instance." "No, thank you," said Ted. "I don't. I heard of them as a child, but now I have no mind to believe. There's only one dragon in Bywater, and that's the Green Dragon," he said, making everyone laugh. "Very well," said Sam, smiling at the others. "But what about the forest folk, the giants, those you might call them? They say these folk are taller than the trees growing just beyond the North Farthing not long ago. Who are they?" "My cousin Hal, for instance. He works for Mr. Boffin at Overhill and went up to North Farthing to hunt. He saw one of them. He may say so. Your Hal always claims to have seen this and that, and perhaps he saw things that weren't there at all. But the one he saw was as tall as a tree, and walking with a stride of 7 yards. So it was just 1 inch. Well, I bet it wasn't an inch. What he saw was a tree, certainly. But it was walking, I tell you. And there's no tree in the North Farthing." "Then Hal could not have seen anything," said Ted. Some laughed and clapped. The audience seemed to think Ted had won. "All the same," said Sam, "you can't stop others outside our harvest from seeing strange folk crossing the Shire, crossing it. Remember, many turned their backs on the road. The border has never been so busy, and I've heard that the elves are going west. They say they are sailing from the harbour past the White Towers." Sam gestured vaguely. Neither he nor any of them knew how far it was from here to the sea, past the old towers beyond the Shire's western border. But ancient legend said that the Grey Havens lay out there, and sometimes elvish ships came and never returned. "They sail." "Sail! Sail to the sea, westward, and leave us," said Sam, half singing, shaking his head sadly and solemnly. But Ted burst out laughing. "Well, nothing new if you believe in old tales, and I see no harm in it for you or me. Let them sail. But I assure you, you won't see it happen, nor anyone else in the Shire." "Ah, I don't know," said Sam thoughtfully. He believed he had once seen an elf in the woods, and still hoped one day to see more. In all the legends he had heard over the past years, full of anecdotes and tales about the elves as known by hobbits, they had deeply impressed him. Some people, even in these parts, know of the fair folk and have news of them, he said. Mr. Baggins is there now at the place I work. He told me they are setting sail and that he knows much about the elves. And Bilbo knew even more. I spoke with him many times when I was a child. Oh, both of them are mad, said Ted. At least that old Bilbo was mad and Frodo is going a bit. If that's where you get your news from, you'll never want to go out under the moonlight again. Well, friends, I'm off home. Good health to you. He drained his drink and noisily strode out. Sam sat in silence, saying nothing more. He had a good idea and was thinking it over. For one thing, there was much to do in the garden at Bag End, and he would have a busy day tomorrow, weather permitting. The grass was growing fast. But in Sam's mind there were things more important than gardening. After a while he sighed, stood up, and set off. It was early April, and the sky was clear after a heavy rain. The sun had set, and a cold, dim evening was quietly giving way to night. He walked home under the early stars, crossing Hobbiton and heading up the hill, whistling softly and deep in thought. It was at this moment that Gandalf reappeared after a long absence. He had been gone for 3 years since the party. Then he visited Frodo briefly, and after observing everything, he departed again. In the following years, he appeared quite frequently, arriving unexpectedly after sunset and leaving before dawn without warning. He said nothing of his affairs or travels and seemed greatly amused by small tidbits about Frodo's health and work. Then suddenly his visits ceased. 9 years had passed since Frodo had last seen or heard of Gandalf, and he began to think the wizard would not return and had lost interest in hobbits. But one afternoon, as Sam was walking home and the light was fading, the familiar tap at the study window sounded again. Frodo welcomed his old friend with surprise and great delight. They gazed at one another intently. "Ah, well met," Gandalf said. "You look the same, Frodo." "So do you," Frodo replied, though he thought Gandalf seemed older and more worn. He demanded news of himself and the wider world, and they soon spoke with great enthusiasm, sitting up late into the night. The next morning, after a late breakfast, the wizard sat with Frodo by the wide-open study window. A bright fire glowed on the hearth, but the sun was warm, the wind blowing from the south. Everything looked fresh, and a new spring green spread over the fields and the tops of trees. Gandalf was thinking of spring nearly 80 years earlier, when Bilbo had run out of Bag End without a handkerchief. His hair might be greyer than then, his beard and eyebrows longer, and his face more lined with caution and wisdom. Yet his eyes were still bright, and he smoked and released rings of smoke with the same vigor and cheerfulness as before. He smoked in silence, for Frodo sat quietly, lost in thought. Even in the morning light, he felt the dark shadow in the news Gandalf brought. At last he broke the silence. "Last night you began to tell me strange things about my ring, Gandalf," he said. "And then you stopped, for some things are best left until morning. Do you think it is time to finish the story now? You said the ring is dangerous, far more dangerous than I guess." "In what sense?" "In many senses," the wizard replied. "It has more power than I first dared to think, so much power that it will ultimately utterly dominate any mortal who possesses it. It will claim the person back. In a region many years ago, many elf rings were made, magical rings as you call them, and they, of course, vary in power. Some are stronger, some weaker. The lesser rings were mere experiments until fully developed, and to the elven smiths they were trifles, but to me they were dangerous to the world. But the great rings, the rings of power, are very evil. A mortal, Frodo, if he keeps one of the great rings, will not die, yet he will not grow or gain new life either. He will simply endure until each moment becomes a burden. And if he uses the ring to make himself invisible, he will wither, he becomes permanently invisible, walking in twilight under the eye of the dark power that controls the rings. Yes, Sooner or later, if he gains strength or power in any sense, the good intentions and strength will not last long. Sooner or later, the dark power will devour him. Terrible, said Frodo. Then another silence fell. The sound of Sam Gamgee cutting grass in the garden could be heard. How long have you known this? Frodo finally asked. And how much did Bilbo know? Bilbo knew no more than he told you, I'm sure, Gandalf said. He would never reveal what he thought was dangerous, though I promised to watch over you. He thought the ring beautiful, very useful when needed, and if anything was wrong or odd, it was only because of that. He said it grew in his mind and he always worried about it. But he did not doubt that the ring itself was causing it. Though he saw it as something to watch, it seemed never the same size or weight, shrinking or stretching strangely, and it could slip off the finger suddenly when worn tightly. Yes, he warned me of that in his last letter, Frodo said, so I kept it on a chain. Very wise, said Gandalf, but throughout his long life, Bilbo never connected it with the ring. He took all the credit for himself, and he was proud of it. Yet he remained uneasy. He said it was thin and stretching, a sign that the ring was taking control. How long have you known this? Frodo asked again. Knew? Gandalf said. I have known many things only the wise can know, Frodo, but if you ask new about this ring, I could not say. It is a final test. But I have no doubt about my prediction. When did I begin guessing? He said, musing, rummaging in memory. Let me see. It was the year the White Council drove the dark power from Mirkwood, just before the Battle of the Five Armies, and Bilbo found the ring. Then a shadow fell upon my heart, though I did not know what I feared. I often wondered how Gollum came by the great ring so clearly, at least the first clear thoughts. Then I heard Bilbo's strange story of how he won it, and I could hardly believe. When I finally drew the truth from him, I saw he was trying to claim the ring without suspicion, very much like Gollum with his birthday present. The lies were very similar to me. Clearly the ring had a corrupting power, affecting its owner immediately. I often told Bilbo rings such as these are best left unused, but he resented this and quickly grew angry. I could do little. I could not take it from him without much harm, and I had no right anyway. I could only observe and wait. I might consult Saruman the White, but something always urged me back. Who is he? Frodo asked. I never heard of him before. Impossible not to, Gandalf replied. The hobbits were, or had been, of no concern to him. But he is great among the wise. He is a leader in our ranks and head of the council. His knowledge is vast, but his pride is equally great, and any interference offends him. The legends and rings of the elves, great and small, are his domain. He has researched much, seeking lost secrets of them, but when the rings were discussed at the council, all he told us about the legend of his ring contradicted what I feared. So my suspicion slept, but not easily. I still watched and waited, and all seemed fairly well with Bilbo, and the months passed. Yes, they passed, and apparently did not touch him. He showed no sign of aging. Thus the shadow fell on me again. But I told myself, after all, he belongs to a long-lived family on his mother's side. Not yet, wait. And so I waited until the night he left home. He said and did things that filled me with fear no words of Saruman could ease. At last I knew something dark and terrible was happening. I have spent most of the years since uncovering its truth. No harm done, I hope? Frodo asked anxiously. He will be all right. Will he be at peace, I mean? He's doing better now, Gandalf said. But only a power in this world knows all about the rings and their uses. And as far as I know, no power in the world knows about hobbits. Among the wise, I am the only one who knows about the hobbit world, a faint branch of knowledge but full of surprises. They may be soft as butter, but sometimes hard as old tree roots. I think hobbits can resist the rings longer than most wise would believe. I do not think you need to worry about Bilbo. Of course, he has owned the ring for many years and used it, so it takes a long time to undo its effects before he could safely see it again. Otherwise, he can live many years quite happily. He only stopped when separated from it. In the end, he did cast it off. This is crucial. No, I do not worry about dear Bilbo any more once he has dealt with it. I only feel responsible for you. Since Bilbo left, I have cared for you and for these charming, foolish, helpless hobbits. A disaster would break over the world if the dark power spread across the Shire. Then all the kind, simple, foolish Bolgers, hornblowers, boffins, bracegirdles, and the ridiculous Bagginses would become slaves. Frodo shivered. But why is that? He asked. And why does he want such slaves? To be honest with you, Gandalf replied, I believe that up until now, you've noticed, he has completely monitored the existence of hobbits. You should feel grateful. But your safety is over. He doesn't need you. He has many more useful servants, but he will not forget you. The suffering of hobbits as miserable slaves will please him more than hobbits being happy and free. It is a malicious matter and an act of revenge. Revenge? Frodo said. Revenge for what? I still don't understand how all this has anything to do with Bilbo and me and our ring. Everything is connected, Gandalf said. You still don't know the full extent of the true disaster. But you will. Even I was not fully sure of it the last time I was here, but time will tell all. Now give me the ring for a moment. Frodo took it out of the locked pouch, where it was hooked on a chain at his waist. He removed it and slowly handed it to the wizard. It suddenly seemed very heavy, as if both it and Frodo resisted when Gandalf touched it. Gandalf held it up. It looked like solid, pure gold. Can you see any marks on it? He asked. No, Frodo said. None. It is completely smooth with not a scratch or a dent. All right, then look. To Frodo's surprise and dismay, the wizard suddenly threw it into the bright corner of the fireplace. Frodo let out a cry and groped for the tongs, but Gandalf pulled him back. Wait, the wizard said in a commanding voice, glancing sharply at Frodo beneath his bushy eyebrows. Nothing happened to the ring. After a while, Gandalf stood, closed the shutter outside the window, and drew the curtain. The room became dark and quiet, though the faint clatter of Sam, now near the window, could still be heard from the garden. The wizard stared at the fire for a moment, then bent down, took the ring out of the hearth with the tongs, and picked it up immediately. Frodo gaped. It's rather cold, Gandalf said. Take it! Frodo received it in his slightly clenched palm. It seemed thicker and heavier than ever before. Hold it up, Gandalf said. And look closely. As Frodo did so, he could now see 5 lines, finer than the finest pen strokes, running along the ring, both inside and out, lines of fire that seemed to form some kind of writing. They shone brightly, yet seemed distant, as if emanating from some deep place. I can't read these strange letters, Frodo said, his voice trembling. No, Gandalf said, but I can. They are elvish letters, an ancient script, but in the language of Mordor, which I absolutely will not use here. But in the common speech, it is like this. Almost exactly. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness, bind them. These are only 2 lines of the old poem long known among the elves. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. He stopped and slowly spoke in a deep voice. This is the Master Ring, the 1 ring that rules them all. This is the 1 ring that was lost many years ago, which greatly diminished his power. He wants it very much, but he must not get it. Frodo sat still, unable to think. Fear seemed to extend its gigantic arms, like a dark cloud rising from the east to engulf him. This ring, he stammered. Why has it come to me? "Ah," Gandalf said, "that is a long story. The beginning lies in the dark years, which only 3 wise masters now remember. If I told you the whole story, we would sit here until spring turned to winter. But last night I told you about the great Sauron, the Dark Lord. The rumors you've heard are true. He has indeed risen and left his dwelling in Mirkwood and returned to his ancient fortress at the Dark Tower in Mordor. Even hobbits, you may have heard of this name, like a shadow over the edges of old tales. Always after a defeat and a pause, darkness rises and grows again." "I wish it did not have to happen in my time," Frodo said. "So do I," Gandalf said, "and so do all who have seen that time." But they could not decide. All we can decide is what to do with the time given to us. And now, Frodo, our time seems rather dark. The enemy is quickly becoming very powerful. His plans are not yet ripe, I think, but they are maturing. We will struggle with it. We should struggle with it, even if there is this terrible chance. The enemy still lacks one thing to give him the power and knowledge to crush all resistance. Break the last defenses and cover the lands in shadow a second time. He lacks the one ring. The 3 rings, the purest of all the rings, were hidden from him by the elven lords, and his hand never touched them or tarnished them. The dwarf lord's 7 rings were recovered in part by him, and dragons burned the others. He gave 9 rings to mortal men, proud and mighty, to ensnare them. Long ago they fell under the dominion of the One, becoming ring-wraiths, shadows under his great darkness, his most fearsome servants. Long years have passed since the 9 rings wandered. But who knows what will happen? When darkness rises again, they may wander once more. But now we will not speak of such things, even in broad daylight in the Shire. So here is the situation. He has gathered the 9 rings for himself, and the 7 rings too, or the rest have been destroyed. The 3 rings remain hidden, but they trouble him no longer. He only needs the 1 ring, for he made that ring for himself. It is his, and he put a great part of his former power into it so he can control the others. If he regains it, he can command them all again. Wherever they are, even the 3 rings and what was crafted with them will lie before him, and he will be stronger than ever. And that is a dreadful opportunity. Frodo, he believed the 1 ring had been destroyed, that the elves had broken it, and let him think so. But now he knows it has not been destroyed, and it has been found. So he searches for it, and all his thoughts converge on it. It is his great hope and our great fear. Why wasn't it destroyed?" Frodo cried. "And how could the enemy lose it if he is so strong, and it is so precious to him?" He clutched the ring in his hand as if he had just seen dark fingers reaching for it. "It was taken from him," Gandalf said. "The resistance of the elves was very strong in the past, and not all men fell into his trap. The men of Westerness came to help. That is a chapter in ancient history worth recalling, and it is full of sorrow and darkness gathered, but courage and deeds were not entirely wasted. Perhaps one day I will tell you the full story, or you will hear it fully told by someone who knows it well. But at this time, most of what you need to know is how this came to you, and I will tell enough of the story. Gil-galad, king of the elves, and Elendil of Westerness defeated Sauron, even at the cost of their own lives, and Isildur, son of Elendil, cut the ring from Sauron's hand and took it himself. Then Sauron vanished, and his spirit hid for a long time, until his shadow formed again in Mirkwood. But the ring was lost. It fell into the great river Anduin and disappeared. For when Isildur marched north along the east bank of the river, near the Gardens of Delight, he was ambushed by orcs on the hills, and nearly all his people were killed. He jumped into the water, but the ring slipped from his hand while he swam, so the orcs saw him and killed him with arrows. Gandalf paused. "And then the shadows fell again over the Gardens of Delight," he said. "The ring vanished from lore and legend, and even its long history today has only remnants left, and the Council of the Wise could discover nothing more. But at least I can follow this story, I think. Long afterward, but still a long time ago, there were very small, skillful people with soft feet living along the great river on the edge of the wilderlands.
I gather they were hobbits.
Like the generations of Stur ancestors, for they loved the river and often swam in it or made little reed rafts. Among them was a family of very high status, for it was large and wealthier than all, and was headed by their grandmother, an old, strict, and very wise woman with ancient knowledge. The most inquisitive and curious member of the family was Sméagol. He cared deeply about origins and beginnings. He dived into deep lakes, dug burrows under tree roots and grew plants, dug tunnels through grassy mounds, and often stopped to look up at treetops, leaves on branches,
Or flowers blooming in the air. His head and eyes always looking downward. He had a friend.
Déagol, much like him, with sharper eyes but not as agile or strong. At one point, they made a raft and floated downstream to the Merrylands, where iris trees and reed beds full of flowers grew. There, Sméagol got off the raft and leaned toward the riverbanks, but Déagol stayed on the raft and fished. Suddenly a fish took the bait, and before he could understand what was happening, he was pulled under to the bottom. Then he was startled, thinking he saw something shiny at the riverbed. He held his breath and grabbed it. Then he gasped his way to the surface, with weeds on his head and hands covered in mud, and he swam to shore. And note this, when he wiped off the mud, there was a beautiful golden ring on his hand, shining and sparkling in the sunlight, filling his heart with joy. But Sméagol had been watching him from under a tree, and when Déagol gazed greedily at the ring, Sméagol quietly called to him from behind. "Give it to us." "Dear Déagol," Sméagol called over his friend's shoulder. "Why?" Déagol asked. "Because it is my birthday, my love, and I want it," Sméagol said. "I don't care," Déagol said. "I have already given you a gift, more than I am able to."
I found it and I will keep it. Oh, you think so, my love, Sméagol said. Then he seized Déagol by the throat and squeezed, for the gold looked so bright and beautiful.
Then he slipped the ring onto his finger. No one knew what happened to Déagol. He was killed far from home, and his body was hidden. But when Sméagol returned alone, he found that no one in his family could see him when he wore the ring. He was very pleased with this discovery, and he hid it. Then he used it to explore secrets, using his knowledge in a devious and cruel manner. He grew sharp eyes and keen ears to all suffering. The ring gave him power commensurate with his stature. It is no surprise that he became very unpopular and shunned, when he appeared, by his relatives. They kicked him and he bit their legs. He began stealing and began muttering to himself with gurgling sounds in his throat. Thus they called him Gollum and cursed him, telling him to go far away. And his grandmother, wishing for peace, expelled him from the family and drove him from her hut. He wandered alone, ruined by the harshness of the world, until he came to the river region, until he found a stream flowing down the mountains, and he followed its course. He caught fish in the deep pools with invisible fingers and ate them alive. One day it was very hot, and as he bent over a pool, he felt the back of his neck burst into flames, and a beam of light from beneath the water made his moist eyes ache. He wondered what it was, for he had almost forgotten the sun. Then that was the last time he looked up and held the fish in front of the sun. But when he lowered his eyes, he saw the peaks of the misty mountains from afar, far from the current, and he thought to himself, "Surely beneath those mountains it will be cold and dark. The sun cannot reach me there. The feet of these mountains must be very deep.
And there must be secrets buried there that have not been discovered since their formation." So he set out at night toward the highlands. Then he found a large cave where the black stream flowed out.
He slithered like a worm into the heart of the hills and vanished from all other knowledge. The ring went into the darkness with him, and even its maker, as its power began to rise again, knew nothing about it. Gollum!" Frodo cried. "Gollum! You mean that is the creature Gollum that old Bilbo met?"
How disgusting.
"I think it is a sad tale," the wizard said, "and it could happen to others, even to some hobbits I have known." "I cannot believe that Gollum has anything to do with some hobbits."
Even distantly, Frodo said with some anger. It's a horrid thought.
"That is entirely true," Gandalf replied. "Regarding their origins for any price, I know more about hobbits than they do themselves, and even Bilbo's story shows some connections. Their intelligence rests on many similar foundations, and their memory is also similar. They understand each other very well, far better than a hobbit could understand, say, a dwarf, an orc, or even an elf. Consider the riddles that both of them knew." "Yes," Frodo said. "Even beyond hobbits, others ask the same type of riddles, and hobbits don't cheat. Gollum never tried to cheat. He only tried to make Bilbo unguarded, and I dare say that this only stirred his wicked nature when starting a game where the outcome could give him an easy victim without needing to harm him." "I fear that is true," Gandalf said. "But there is another matter in this story, I think, which you have not yet realized. Even Gollum has not been completely destroyed by the ring. He will demonstrate the resilience of a hobbit mind that even the Council of the Wise could not foresee. There is still a corner of his mind that belongs to him, and the light still flickers there, like through a crack in the shadow. The light of the past."
I think he feels comforted when silencing the voice.
Letting memory return to the wind, the trees, the sun on the grass, and other things long forgotten. But of course, this only makes the demonic part of him angrier unless it is conquered. "Unless it is healed," Gandalf sighed. "My goodness, there is very little hope of achieving this with him. But it is not hopeless. No, even though he has possessed the ring for so long, almost as long as he can remember. For a long time he has not used it much. In the dense darkness, it is rarely needed. Surely he has become almost vanished. He is still fragile and enduring. But that thing still corrodes his mind, of course. And the torment has become unbearable. All the great secrets beneath the mountains have finally become an empty night. Nothing left to explore, nothing left to do except steal food and brood in rage. He became utterly wretched. He hated the night, and he hated the light even more. He hated everything and hated the ring above all. "What are you saying?" Frodo said. "Surely the ring is precious to him and the only thing he still cares about. But if he hates it, why doesn't he throw it away or just leave it behind?" "You should understand, Frodo, after all you have heard," Gandalf said.
He hates it and loves it, just as he hates and loves himself.
He cannot abandon it. He cannot leave it go in that way. A ring of power always watches over itself, Frodo. It may slip away cunningly, but those who hold it never truly let it go. At most, a person may only think to entrust it to another. But when this happens in a moment of ease, it tightens its hold again. But as far as I know, Bilbo was the only one in history not only to think so, but actually to achieve it.
He also needed all my help.
And he never thought of abandoning it or throwing it away. It was not Gollum, Frodo, but the ring itself that decided everything. The ring left him, what, just in time to meet old Bilbo, Frodo said. Wouldn't it have been better for an orc to wear it?
This is no laughing matter, Gandalf said. Not for you.
It is the strangest event in the history of the ring so far. Bilbo came just at the right time and laid his hand on it while seeing nothing in the dark. There is more than one power at work, Frodo. The ring is trying to return to its master. It slipped from Isildur's hand and betrayed him. Then, when given a chance, it came upon poor Déagol, and he was killed. And then Gollum, and it consumed him. It could not use him for much. He was too small and mean. And while with him, he never left his deep pool. So now, when its master has awakened once more and sent his dark thoughts from Mirkwood, it abandons Gollum, only to be picked up by someone most unlikely to imagine it, Bilbo of the Shire. Behind this Something is at work beyond the design of the ringmaker.
I cannot make it any clearer by saying that Bilbo was guided to the ring, and not by the ringmaker.
In this case, you two are guided to have it. And that may be a bold thought indeed. No, Frodo said.
Even if I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
But how can you know everything about the ring and about Gollum? Do you truly know it all, or are you just guessing? Gandalf looked at Frodo, and his eyes gleamed. I know much, and I have learned much, he replied. But I do not intend to explain what I do with you. The entire Council of the Wise knows the history of Elendil and Isildur, and the One Ring. Your ring has been identified as the One Ring by the letters read in the fire,
Among other evidence. And when did you discover it?
Frodo asked, interrupting. Only now in this room, of course, the wizard replied briefly. But I have been waiting to find it. I have returned from dark journeys and have searched for a long time to perform this final test. This is the last proof, and everything is now perfectly clear. Clarifying the story of Gollum, placing it in the gaps of history, requires much thought. I may have begun by speculating about Gollum, but now I know.
I know I have met him. You have met Gollum?
Frodo cried in horror. Yes, of course, it was an obvious thing to do, if possible. I had tried for quite a long time, but finally I succeeded. This happened after old Bilbo escaped from him. You knew? Not very clearly. What I tell you is that Gollum was willing to speak, though of course not in the way I recount it. Gollum is a liar, and you must sift from his words. For example, he said the ring was his birthday present, and he clung to that. He said his grandmother had given it to him, she who had given away many beautiful things like it. A ridiculous tale. I do not doubt that Smeagol's grandmother was a lady, a great person in her time, but to say that she possessed many elven rings is laughable, and as for giving it away, that is surely a lie, but a lie with a tendency toward truth. The killing of Déagol haunted Gollum, and he defended it, repeating over and over that it was his treasure as he lurked in the shadows, until he entirely believed it. That day was indeed his birthday. Déagol should have given him the ring, and gradually it became a gift. It was his birthday gift, and so it went, and so it went. I endured him long enough, but the truth was too important, and at last I had to be forceful. I frightened him with fire and drew the true story from him, bit by bit, along with his moans and mutterings. He thought he had been misunderstood and treated harshly, but finally, when he told me his story, and also when the tale of the riddle game and Bilbo's escape ended, he said no more, except for vague directions. He feared something else more than me. He muttered that he had intended to reshape himself. If anyone saw him, he would soil himself, be dragged into a hole, and robbed. By this time, Gollum had good companions, strong companions.
They would help him.
Baggins would pay for this. That was his main thought. He hated Bilbo and cursed the fellow.
And he knew where he went. But how did he know?
Frodo asked. Oh, because of the name. Bilbo foolishly told Gollum his name, and then it was not hard to trace his home when Gollum escaped.
Oh yes, he did escape.
His desire for the ring was far greater than his fear of orcs or even of the light. After a few years, he left the mountains. You see, even though he was still bound to that desire, the ring no longer consumed him. He began to awaken gradually. He grew terribly old, less timid, and terribly hungry. The light, the sunlight and moonlight he still feared and hated, and he always would, I think, but he was very cunning. He saw that he could hide from the sunlight and moonlight, and then move quickly and lightly in dark nights with his pale, cold eyes, and catch small creatures that were frightened or unwary. He grew stronger and more resilient with new food and fresh air. He found his way to Mirkwood, as had been expected. You saw him there? I saw him there, Gandalf replied, but before that he had wandered far, following Bilbo's trail. It is hard to be certain of anything about him, for his speech is always interrupted with curses and threats. What about the things in his pockets? He said. He says nothing, no treasure at all. Too deceitful. Not a fair question. First, it is a trick. He breaks all the rules. We squeeze him, not treasure.
And we will do it, treasure.
That is merely his words. I would not be surprised if you wanted to know more. I was too weary of him. But from the hints he let slip between growls, I finally pieced together that his broad feet eventually led him to Esgaroth, and even to the roads at Dale, listening and watching in secret. Thus, news of great events spread far and wide across the Wilderland, and many had heard of Bilbo and knew whence he came. We did not keep secret our return journey to his home in the west. Gollum's keen ears had soon heard what he wanted to know. Then why didn't he follow old Bilbo further? Frodo asked. Why didn't he go to the Shire?
Ah, Gandalf said, now we come to that. I think Gollum tried to do so.
He set out and went westward, all the way to the great river. But then he turned aside. He was not daunted by the distance, I'm sure.
No, something else drove him off completely.
My friends think so, those who hunted him for me. The woodland elves had tracked him earlier, for it was easy for them since his trail was still fresh. It led them across Mirkwood and back again, though they could not catch him. The forest was full of rumours of him, frightening tales though they spread among wild beasts and birds. The woodman said a new terror was spreading, a blood-drinking ghost. It climbed trees to seek nests. It crept into pits to find young beasts. It slipped through windows to reach cradles. But on the western edge of Mirkwood, the trail turned another way. It wandered southward and vanished from the sight of the woodland elves and disappeared.
And then I made a grave mistake.
Yes, Frodo, and this was not the first time, though I feared it might be the worst.
I let it happen.
I let him go, for I had other matters to think of then, and I still trusted the knowledge of Saruman. So that happened many years ago. I paid for it with many dark and dangerous days. The trail had long gone cold when I sought him again, after Bilbo had left here.
And my search would have been hopeless without the help I obtained from a friend, Aragorn, the greatest traveller and hunter of ancient times.
We hunted Gollum across the Wilderland without hope and gained no results. But finally, when I had given up and turned elsewhere, Gollum was discovered. My friend returned after grave dangers, bringing with him a wretched creature. Tiwai, what he did he would not say. He only wailed and called us cruel, with many Gollum murmurs in his throat. And when we pressed him, he groaned and cowered, twisted his hands, licked his fingers as if they hurt him, as if remembering old tortures. But I fear there is no doubt he moved slowly, stealthily, step by step, mile by mile southward, and finally reached the realm of Mordor. A silence fell over the room. Frodo could hear his heart thumping. Even outside all seemed still.
Sam's dragging feet could not be heard. Yes to Mordor, Gandalf said. My goodness! Mordor has gathered all the most cunning things, and the dark power has used all its will to assemble them there.
The enemy's ring will also leave its mark so that he may summon them. And everyone whispers of a new darkness in the south and its hatred of the west, and he has new allies to help him take revenge.
Poor fool.
In that land he will learn much far more than he wishes. Sooner or later, as he skulks and prowls along that border, he will be caught and seized or searched.
I fear that is what has happened.
When we found him, he had been there long and was on his way back, engaged in some petty villainy. But now it causes little trouble. The worst mischief he had done was already complete. Yes, my goodness, through him the enemy learned that the One Ring had been found again. He knew where Isildur fell. He knew where Gollum found the ring. He knew it was the Great Ring, for it lengthened life. He knew it was not one of the 3 rings, for they were never lost and caused no harm. He knew it was not one of the 7 rings, nor the 9, for they had been accounted for. He knew it was the One Ring. And finally he learned, I think, about the Hobbit and the Shire. The Shire, perhaps by now, he is searching for it, if he has not yet found its location. Truly, Frodo, I fear he may have even thought that the name Baggins, long unnoticed, has become important. But that is dreadful, Frodo cried. From your hints, I imagine far worse things than the worst. Oh, Gandalf, my dearest friend, what shall I do? For now I am truly afraid. What shall I do? What a pity that old Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had the chance. Pity? That very compassion stayed his hand. Compassion and mercy, to not strike unless necessary. And he was rewarded, Frodo. Understand that he caused the creature much damage and ultimately escaped because he began to claim ownership of the ring with mercy. I am very sorry, Frodo said, but I am terrified, and I feel no pity for Gollum at all. You have not seen him, Gandalf interjected. No, I do not want to, Frodo said.
I cannot understand you.
Do you mean that you and the elves allowed him to live after all those horrors?
Now he is as vile as an orc, and should be treated only as an enemy. He ought to die. Ought to die, I would say so too.
Many lives deserve death, and some deaths deserve to live. Can you give them that? And do not be too eager to judge death. Even great wisdom cannot foresee all outcomes. I have little hope that Gollum will be healed before he dies, but there is still a chance, and he is bound to the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he still plays some role, good or ill, before all ends. And when that happens, Bilbo's mercy may shape the fate of many, not just you.
At any rate, we spared him. He was very old and very cunning.
The woodland elves imprisoned him, but they treated him kindly with their noble hearts. Even so, Frodo said, even Bilbo could not have killed Gollum.
I wish he had not kept the ring. I wish he had never found it, and thus I would not have it.
Why did you let me keep it?
Why did you not tell me to throw it away or destroy it?
To let you do it?
Tell you to do it,
The wizard said. Did you hear all I just told you? You do not consider what you are saying. But if you throw it away, that would be entirely wrong. These rings have ways of being found. In evil hands they can do utmost evil. Worst of all, it could fall into the enemy's hands. It surely would, for this is the one ring, and he will try with all his power to find it or draw it to himself. Of course, dear Frodo, this is dangerous for you.
and it causes me great anguish.
But because of so much danger, I must take the risk, though even when I am far away, there is never a day when the Shire is unguarded by vigilant eyes. While you do not use it, I do not think the ring can produce lasting effects on you or cause evil over all that time. And remember that 9 years ago when I last met you, I still knew too little and was uncertain of many things. But why not destroy it when it is said that this should have been done long ago? Frodo cried again. If you had warned me beforehand or even sent a message, I might have done it. Done it?
How would you do it?
Have you tried? No, but I think I might smash it or melt it. Try, Gandalf said. Try it now. Frodo took the ring out of his pocket and studied it. Now it seemed smooth again. He could see no marks or designs on it. The gold looked bright and pure, and Frodo thought its colour was rich and beautiful, its circle perfectly round. It was a worthy and precious object. As he lifted it, intending to cast it into the hottest flame, he now saw that he could not do so without inner struggle. He raised the ring in his hand, hesitated, and tried to recall everything Gandalf had said. Then, with an effort, he made a throwing motion, but found himself slipping it back into his pocket. Gandalf laughed shortly.
See, you're just the same, Frodo. You cannot easily throw it away nor harm it.
And I cannot tell you to do so except by force, and that would affect your mind. But to break the ring, even force is useless. Even if you held it and struck it with a heavy hammer, it would leave no mark. It cannot be destroyed by your hand or mine. The small flame you have, of course, cannot melt even ordinary gold. This ring was thrown into it without a scratch, not even heated. But now no forge in the Shire could alter it in the slightest. Even the anvils and forges of the dwarves could not do it. It is said that a dragon's fire can melt and destroy the rings of power, but not now. No dragon on this earth possesses an ancient enough fire, and not even Ankalagan the Black could harm the One Ring, the Master Ring, for it was made by Sauron himself. There is only one way. Find the cracks of doom deep within Orodruin, the mountain of fire, and throw the ring in. If you truly wish to destroy it, to put it forever beyond the enemy's grasp. I truly wish to destroy it, Frodo exclaimed. Or yes, to have it destroyed. I was not meant for such perilous tasks.
I wish I had never seen the ring. Why did it come to me? Why was I chosen?
Such questions cannot be answered, Gandalf said. You can be certain that if others had it, it would not mean they were worthless, not in power or wisdom, certainly. But you were chosen, and therefore you must use the strength, courage, and wisdom that you possess. But I am too small for any of this. You are wise and powerful.
Why do you not take the ring? No!
Gandalf shouted, springing to his feet. With that power, I would possess a power too terrible and fearsome, and the ring would draw from me an even greater and more terrible power. His eyes flashed, and his face shone with an inner fire. Do not tempt me!
I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself.
But the way the ring came to my heart is through mercy, compassion for weakness, and desire to do good. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused by anyone. The desire to wield it is stronger than my strength.
I will need it. Terrible dangers lie ahead of me. He stepped to the window and drew the curtains and shutters aside.
Sunlight streamed back into the room. Sam was walking along a path outside, whistling. And now, the wizard said, turning to Frodo, the decision rests with you, but I will always aid you. He placed his hand on Frodo's shoulder. I will help you bear this burden as long as it remains yours to bear. But soon we must do something.
The enemy is moving. A long silence followed.
Gandalf sat again and released smoke from his pipe as if lost in thought. His eyes seemed half-closed, but he watched Frodo keenly from under his lashes. Frodo stared at the glowing embers on the hearth until they filled his vision, seeming like deep, fathomless pits. He thought of the legendary chasms of doom and the terror of the cruel mountain.
All right,
Gandalf finally said. What are you thinking? What have you decided? No, Frodo replied, gathering himself from the darkness, and to his surprise, it was not completely dark, and he could see the sunlight from the garden outside. Or perhaps, yes.
As I understand what you mean, I think I must keep the ring and protect it. At least for now, even if it may harm me. Even if it does.
The harm will be slow, painfully slow if you keep it for that purpose, Gandalf said. I hope so, Frodo said. But I hope that you may soon find better hands to hold it. Meanwhile, it seems I am a danger to all who live near me.
I cannot keep the ring here.
I must leave Bag End, leave the Shire, to let things settle and go. He sighed. I will defend the Shire, if I can, even though often I think the folk here are too foolish and dull, and a quake or a dragon's invasion would do them good. But now I feel differently. I feel that while the Shire remains safe and prosperous behind us,
leaving is worth the suffering. I will know there is some safe place to go, even if my feet cannot return there. Of course I have thought of leaving at times, but I imagined it as a kind of festival.
A string of adventures like Bilbo's or more, ending in peace. But now this means exile, fleeing from one journey to another, being pursued, and I feel very small and rootless, and yes, desperate. The enemy is too strong, too fearsome. He did not tell Gandalf, but when he spoke of a great desire to follow in Bilbo's footsteps, the fire burned in his heart to follow Bilbo's trail and perhaps find him again. It was so strong it overcame his fear. He could almost run out at once and rush down the road unshod, but Bilbo had done nearly the same on a morning long ago. My dear Frodo, Gandalf cried, hobbits are truly passionate creatures, as I have said before. You can learn all about them in a month, and after 100 years they still surprise you.
I hardly expected such an answer, even from you.
But Bilbo made no mistake in choosing his heir. though he may not have thought much about its importance. I fear you are right. The ring cannot remain hidden in the Shire any longer, and for your own good, as well as others, you must go and leave the name Baggins behind. That name is unsafe outside the Shire or in the wild. Now I will give you a travelling name. When you go, take the name Mr. Underhill. But I do not think you must go alone. If you know someone you can trust and someone willing to accompany you, you will be ready to face an unforeseen danger. But if you choose a companion, choose carefully, and be cautious with what you say, even to your closest friends. The enemy has many spies and many ways to listen. Suddenly he stopped, as if listening. Frodo realized that all around was completely silent, inside and out. Gandalf stepped lightly toward a window. Then he leapt to it, stretched out a long arm and lowered it. With a squawking noise, the curly head of Sam Gamgee was lifted up from one side of the ear. Ah, bless my beard, Gandalf said. Sam Gamgee, is that you?
And what are you doing here?
God bless you, Sir Gandalf, sir,
Sam said. Nothing at all.
I was just trimming the grass under the window, if you understand me. He held up the large shears as proof. I do not think so, Gandalf said sternly. It has been a long while since I heard your shears. How long have you been eavesdropping? Eavesdropping, sir?
I do not understand, forgive me.
There is no eaves at Bag End, and that is true. Do not play coy. What have you heard, and why were you listening? Gandalf's eyes blazed, and his eyebrows shot up like bamboo roots. Sir Frodo, sir, Sam cried, trembling. Do not let him hurt me, sir.
Do not let him turn me into some monstrous thing.
My old father would be terrified.
I have done no harm, I swear on my honour, sir.
He will not hurt you, Frodo said, trying not to laugh, though he was startled and confused. He knows as I do that you meant no harm. But stand up and answer his questions at once.
Yes, sir, Sam said, quivering. I have heard a story I understand a bit of about an enemy, about rings, and about Mr. Bilbo, sir, and dragons, and about a cruel mountain, and the elves, sir.
I listened because I could not help myself, if you understand what I mean. God bless me, sir, but I love these stories.
And I believe them, sir, no matter what Ted says.
The elves, sir? I very much wish to meet them. Could you show me the elves, sir, when the day comes? Suddenly Gandalf laughed aloud.
Come inside,
he called, and with both hands he lifted the bewildered Sam through the window, along with the cut grass and everything else, setting him on the floor. Gonna see the elves, he said, looking Sam over carefully, but with a wide smile. So you have heard that Mr. Frodo intends to leave?
I heard it, sir.
That is why I sobbed. Perhaps you have heard it. I tried to hold back, sir, but it burst out of me. I was too upset. This cannot be helped, Sam, Frodo said sadly. He suddenly realized that leaving the Shire would be far harder than simply saying goodbye to the familiar comforts of Bag End. I must go.
But, and he looked Sam squarely in the eye, if you truly care for me, you must keep complete silence. Understand? If you do not, if you even breathe a word of what you have just heard, I hope Gandalf will turn you into a green frog and let the grass snakes loose in the garden. Sam fell to his knees, trembling.
Stand up, Sam, Gandalf said. I have thought of something even better, something that will seal your lips and punish you fittingly for eavesdropping.
You shall go with Mr. Frodo. Me, sir,
Sam cried, springing up like a dog invited for a walk. I go and see the elves and everything. Hooray! He shouted, bursting into tears.